All right, hello once again. Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies class, I've been going through a series of video presentations that I'm creating based off of the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. I'm in the Securing the Web with HTML, and I'm up to the second of 3 parts in there, and that is Multimedia and Embedding. And it's time to talk images. As mentioned in the beginning, the web was text, and that's the way that it was actually set up. But, you know, let's face it, if it was just text, it would be pretty boring. All right? So it says there are other types of multimedia to consider, but logically, we're going to start with images. Now, one of the things with images that we'll discuss in here is the figure tag, which is another one of these new semantic tags. Not mandatory that you use it, but it's kind of a nice thing to have, and we'll get into it in just a minute. So how do we put an image on a web page? Guess what? You already know that. We have already looked at it. So to put an image on a web page, of course, you use the image element. As mentioned right there, and you can see it on your screen, the image element is an empty element, meaning there is no closing tag. If you try to add a tag like this, but with a slash before it, either you're going to get an error or it's just not going to work. I've never even tried doing it. Now, at a minimum, you should add 2 different things to your image. The first is, of course you need a source, because if you don't put it in there, that's where the image lives. The other thing you should get used to always putting in there is an alt tag. The alt tag, which means alternative text, is used for a couple main purposes. First of all, if someone is blind and they have a browser for the blind, of course they're not going to be able to see images. But the alt tag can be used to let them know what is in the image. All right. Also importantly, if you have an alt tag in and either the image that you're trying to show does not exist, because either it's not there or you gave it a wrong path or you gave it a wrong file name, whatever you put in the alt tag will show instead. All right. So as it says, the source attribute contains the path that points to the image. We have been going in and putting all of our images into an IMG folder. In fact, if we go back in here and we look at our I Love Missouri project, you can see we've got an images folder, and that has our arch image in it. Now, just so you know, our arch image is a JPEG file, JPG. Sometimes these are put in as JPEG files as well, but it's a JPEG type of file. All right. So it says if your image was called dinosaur.jpg, this would be a way to put it in. But again, we have an images folder, so we'd put it in like this. There's a note here towards the bottom that says search engines also read image file names and count them towards search engine optimization. So for instance, dinosaur.jpg would be better than image followed by a number. Okay. All right. You could embed an image using its absolute URL. Now, what's the advantage of doing that? All right. Well, if you remember, this was the arch. So we've got this. And I copied that from, I think it was like, this was the image. And I think we copied this from, I don't know, let's look. So, was it Unsplash? I don't remember. How about this? St. Louis Arch. All right, so there's some pictures of the arch. Let's change the one we have and let's put in another one. Now, we can come in here. All right, we can come in here and we can click download for free and we can pick a size, etc. We can do all that stuff. Or what we should be able to do is to right mouse click on here and choose copy image address. All right, so I've copied the image address and now I'm going to go back into my file here. This is the one that we had from the last thing that we were working on. So that's back in here. All right. And this was our image right there. So I'm going to take this for right now, and I'm just going to comment this out. So I'm going to comment the image out. All right. Save this. I'm going to go back to our page, and you'll notice, indeed, the image is gone. It's all now just text. All right, but what I'm going to try to do is put it back in, but put in the other image. So I'm going to put in IMG, source equals, and now instead of me putting an actual address, I'm going to put in that. What is that? That is the Unsplash address to that photo. All right, and when I get to the end, I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to say Alt equals picture of St. Louis Arch from unsplash.com. All right, so you can see how that's changed. So let's go in onto our site here and let's refresh. And notice it's back, but it's a different image. Now, was there something advantageous to doing this as opposed to doing it the other way? The answer is basically it's yes. And that what I'm getting to here is if what we're going to do is we're going to have a site that's got a lot of images in it. Typically, all those images are going to load when you first bring up the website, and that may take some time. By putting in addresses like this, it's not going to take as long because all it has to do is basically figure out where that address is. Now, is this still like we had before? Is it still responsive? And it sure looks as though it is. Now, we do lose a little bit of control here in that with what we had before on our web page, all right, with what we had before on it, we could manipulate the image directly, but now we're manipulating something that is inside of an address. All right, there's always trade-offs when you do any of this stuff. Now, it says here, this is pointless as it makes the browser do more work. It has to look up the IP address. You'll always want to keep the images for your website on the same server as your HTML. I'm not going to disagree with that. Just be really cognizant of the fact that if your particular website has tons of images in it, it may vastly affect the amount of time it takes the website to load. All right, the warning. Most images are copyrighted. Don't display them unless you either own them or you have explicit written permission. Typically, what will suffice for that would be if you had an email that somebody had sent to you. But if that happens, if you ask for written permission and they say, oh yeah, you can use it, and they send it back in an email, for goodness sakes, keep that email. All right? But do not just, like I don't want to sit there and say, wow, this is really cool, this image. I'm going to grab it and put it on my website. Don't ever do anything like that. All right? Without permission. All right. The bottom one is what we're doing in here. We have ample proof that the image is in fact in the public domain because all the Unsplash things that are in there are in the public domain. All right. Copyright violations are illegal and unethical. Never point your source attribute to an image hosted on somebody else's website without permission, as it says. This is known as hot linking. All right. Notice it also slows down your page. Okay. All right. Elements like image and video elements are sometimes referred to as replaced elements because the content and size are defined by an external resource. In other words, unless you took the picture, it's going to have a size, and you noticed, hopefully you noticed, that when we went out and we looked, right here, we could have downloaded this at a lot of different sizes. Notice what the original size is, but we could have also downloaded a smaller, a medium, or a large type of an idea. All right. Alt text we've kind of talked about already, okay? As it says, it's used in situations where the image cannot be seen or displayed, or it takes a long time to render because of a slow internet connection. The easiest way to test your alt text is to purposely misspell your file name. I've already done that. And you saw something like this. It says, so why would you ever see or need alt text? Some of this I've already gone over, but let's just talk about it again. Again, if the user is visually impaired and is using a screen reader, having, as it says, alt text available is useful to them. Next, as we've already seen, if you've spelled a file name wrong or put in a wrong path name, or if for some reason the file has been moved or removed, all right, the browser doesn't support the image type. Well, that's, as it says, that's if you're using like a text-only browser. Typically, with most of us, that's not going to be an issue. You may want to provide text for search engines to utilize. For example, search engines can match alt text with search queries. Finally, the user may have turned off images. Yeah, it's possible to do things like that. It says, what exactly should you write inside of your alt attribute? It depends on why the image is there in the first place. In other words, what do you lose if your image doesn't show up? All right, it says you could have a decoration image, but even there you should have alt equals nothing. What would a decoration image be? Well, let's just suppose, I mean, you could kind of look at it that if it wasn't a logo, let's just say you had a flower that you wanted to appear on the page and there was nothing special about it. It was just a filler. You could put that in there and put a blank alt equals double quote in there, because if the image, as it says, isn't part of the content. All right. Content. If your image provides significant information, the alt tag again is better. Now notice, don't write redundant alt text. How annoying would that be for the sighted user if all paragraphs were written twice? Yeah. You can put the image inside of an A tag to turn the image into a link. If you remember, that's what we did already. All right. So we could, in fact, is ours set up right now? Whoops, wrong one. No, there we go. It still is inside of that A tag, so this should be a clickable image. All right, so let's check. So bird watching one that we were working on before. There it is. So if we click on the image, boom, we're going back to the Arch website again. All right, okay. Text, as it says, you should not put your text into images. Okay, you can use CSS for different kinds of effects if you want to. Now notice, the key to deliver a usable experience even when the images can't be seen. So again, as it says, if you want to test this, turn images off on your browser to see what it looks like if you just have the alt text. Okay. Now back in the olden days, 20, 30 years ago, whatever, as it says, people would oftentimes use height and width and put those right into the image tag themselves. Could we do that? The answer is, of course we could. All right. But it's not really done much like that anymore. This is hard coding this in. The bad thing about hard coding it in is what you're saying is I don't want this to change regardless of the size of the screen that I'm displaying it on. All right. This right here says, this is kind of a ghosting type of thing, which says if the image hasn't loaded yet, you'll get kind of this mirror image of how big it's going to be when you put in a height and a weight. I should say a height and a width. All right. As it says, do not alter the size of your image using HTML attributes. I've already shown you how to do that. If you remember, one of the things that I did was I went into the bird watching site that we just had. I grabbed that logo that was in there. I saved it, went into Paint, changed the size of it to 32 by 32, saved it as an ICO file, and then had it as our favicon. So yeah, you can do that. Should you? I mean, it depends on the situation. But as they mentioned there, and I will totally 100% agree with them, that it's very easy to skew the way an image looks by changing the height and or the width. If you are going to do that, as it says, at a minimum, you should maintain the correct aspect ratio. And really, you should use CSS to do this. All right, titles. We've already talked a little bit about titles. As it says, as with links, you can add a title to images to provide even further supporting information. All right, so this isn't bad. The head and torso of a dinosaur skeleton, etc. But notice the title says that it's a T-Rex that's on display at this museum. You could even add more if you wanted to do that. It gives you that tool tip. All right, now notice it says this is not recommended. Title has a number of accessibility problems, mainly based around the fact that the screen reader support is very unpredictable. So another reason that if you are going to use that, okay, make sure you test on all sorts of different browsers, versions of different browsers, test for accessibility, etc. All right, says it is better to include such supporting information in the main article text rather than attaching it to the image. And actually, that makes a heck of a lot of sense when you think about it. All right. Okay, I'm just about up to my limit here. I'm at 17 minutes, and we're a little more than half through. So this active learning thing that's in here, I don't know, we can take a quick look. It says it's your turn to play. It says we'll have you up and running with a simple exercise. You are provided with a basic image that you are supposed to put in. So here's the image. Now I can always test that by coming over here, at least try to do this, and hit enter. There's the image. It's the same one that we saw before. All right. All right. So it never a hot link, but this is just for learning purposes. So yeah, it says it's fine to do that. They're telling you to add some alt text to it, okay, and set the title. Now, if we looked at the solution, notice what they have here, and I'm going to grab their stuff. This is right out of what we've been looking at. So let's just take a quick look at it here. So image source equals. So there's our source tag. Here's our alt tag. All right, there's our width. And again, I wouldn't recommend doing this. There's our height. You'll see, so for instance, right now it works and it works just fine. All right, you already saw this, that it works just fine. But I can come in here and maybe I'm doing a little bit of overkill here, but I'm going to just very quickly try to do this. All right, so let's come in here and we'll do this. All right, so we've got a very little body section in here with just this picture. And we'll save this to our desktop as dinosaur.html. All right, and if I run this, there it is. You see what we've got. Well, look how skewed it looks. All right, not sure why. I don't know if I changed something or not, but that really does look terrible. So let's take a look at what we might have done here. 200 by 171. It doesn't look like it. but it looked a lot wider than it was taller. So let's try changing this to 771. See what change it makes. So you can see it's not hard to skew these things and make them look much different by manipulating the height or the width. All right, what if I totally remove the height and the width? So all I have in here is my alt text, my title. All right, as far as I can tell, it looks better. It might still look a little bit grainy, but you hopefully get the idea. That's it at 100% right there. All right. Now I know we've got to be butting up. Yeah, we're already at 21 minutes. Is there anything else in this particular section that we need to go over? Yes, I want to come in and start talking about annotating with the figure and the figure caption tag. So I'll be back with that momentarily.